Hello, and welcome to episode 6, Duality, in my Comprehending Consciousness series, which is an attempt on my part to hopefully bridge the gap between those who are newly waking up and those who have, been awake for a while and who have already kind of started this new age conscious community that's forming out there in the world, right? So these videos are quick, sort of informational, educational kind of tidbits on iceberg topics, which are basically terms or phrases that represent some kind of concept here in our new aged world. and so I'm hoping to just give brief outlines or ideas of what these terms are to sort of broaden up your perspective and hopefully get people into defining these terms better for themselves, right? And digging into maybe what they mean to them, what they can mean, um, in exploration, right? Into new topics, because we're ascending here into, a new earth, a new world, and with that is going to come, new lingo, new solutions, new ways of being, right? We're getting a new perspective on something old, and it's really wonderful. As long as you can keep a positive look about it, right? And so in this series here, I'm really hoping to offer that and to help people who maybe are confused or overwhelmed or feeling out of the loop or left out or whatever, like how to get into it a little bit, right? Because the key here is really, this is a personal journey, right? It's a soul evolution. We are here on this planet, in this plane, world, whatever you want to call the field. We're all here, right? We're here for some purpose. And whether you choose to think that that purpose is defined in a single lifetime or whether it's multiple lifetimes, that is not really of our concern so much. And as we step into this higher place of consciousness, the conscious community, right, we're sort of taking off that expectation of having an answer for everything, right? And stepping into the circle, understanding that we're all limited by the great mystery of this world, and that it's not really our place or space right now to be trying to define the container and like find the ultimate purpose of the why, the singular purpose in the soul is really what we're trying to get at, and what this space and this next step is really going to be all about. Because everybody wants to know the great mystery and the ultimate whys, and have those type of big picture answers, but I just don't see that type of information as being available to human beings, like in this sort of 3 to 4, 5D spectrum that we are inhabiting right now. Just, it's like trying to take a square peg and jam it into a circular hole. It just doesn't work out. Not to say that the peg isn't valid or the hole itself isn't there and it isn't valid. They both are. And we need to understand that and work within that and know that, okay, these pieces don't go together right now because we don't see how they fit. But doesn't mean that they don't ever fit together. And to that, I will say, and I might add in that shadowed image of a cylinder, the 3D cylinder shape. And if you cast a shadow of a cylinder in this direction, it captures the rectangular shape that it creates, the shadow. But if you cast the shadow from another angle, you'll see the circle only, right? And so everything's based on perspective, higher sight, and a casting of light, okay? And so the world that we're in follows those rules as well. And so you can't really, it's kind of a waste of time to worry about how the light is being cast and reflected, who's controlling the light, what the light is coming from, right? It's more fluid and feels easier and is harmonious, right? If we just accept for now that we don't see that big picture. And then try to sort through what we can see and what we can define and what we know firsthand, right? And so with that kind of introduction, I am hoping to give a roundabout example here and leading into duality, because duality in itself has many definitions, and lots of people have preconceived understandings of what duality means. And some people think duality is a feeling of oneness or wholeness, and being the whole picture, the whole big scheme is like all connected. You know, I had somebody say something like that to me the other day, and I didn't correct them either, because, you know, people, we're allowed to have our own understandings and workings of things, you know. We don't have to jump on other people's definitions and say, no, it's not like that, or, oh, this is not as, it's more intricate than that, or something, you know. Just the fact that they're encompassing or attempting to see and encompass wholeness and understand what that even is wonderful for me and for them, you know. And that's like, okay, I see that the major working and the wheels are turning in there, you know. So there's no sense in picking apart the way that the gears are forming right now for them, you know. The wheels are moving, and that's in itself is a seeking of truth, right? They are on their path to truth, into oneness, and I'm not going to rush them or push them or anything. But I will say, and what I really wanted to say at that point, right, was the distinction when we're talking about wholeness and we're talking about all-encompassing, yin-yang kind of worldview. That is non-duality, right? That is oneness. That is more difficult for us to explain than duality. Duality is the comparison of two things. It is holding things in contrast. Now, most of us, initially we hear duality and we think dark, light, good, bad, sun, the moon, you know, up, down, hot, cold, opposites, right? And duality in itself is the comparison of opposites, right? So it's important for us, once we can grasp the idea of opposites and what that means, by identifying lots of them, by comparing them, by seeing them at play, by watching their natural compilation, their natural alignments, their natural affinities, right? What they gravitate towards, the things that they represent to us, right? So when we think about, say, night and day, and we talk about night, it's pretty clear. Darkness, moon, stars, no sun, nocturnal animals, you know, quiet, resting. There's lots of things that we can think of that come along with nighttime or darkness, right? And we look at daytime or the sun, you know, we have light, awake, movement, growth, heat, warmth, these types of things that just, they immediately resonate on that side of the spectrum, right? And it's beautiful. And the beginning growth of third dimension reality third density growth and this expansion of personal conscious awareness that happens in third density is the beginnings and the percolation of comparison of duality, right? It is the conscious observations of our plane of existence, of the world around you. It's a categorizing, organizational mind sort of programming, right? And it really is. And it comes with the setting of this plane, this earth school world that we're in. We come, bam, pre-programmed with this concept of duality, of comparisons, and, of opposing forces, right? And it's such a obvious, inherited, innate kind of thing in us that it kind of gets glazed over. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when you are cooking bacon in your house or whatever, and you smell it, but then as you're cooking and making dinner, you get used to the smell and you don't smell it. But as soon as somebody comes in, they're like, oh, I smell bacon outside, and you're like, oh, I didn't even smell it anymore. Adaptation, that beautiful acceptance of normality that our brain does, and says, oh, I'm used to that, oh, I accept that, oh, that's a continuous thing. Duality in itself becomes that kind of setting for us. It's just unconscious programming. But as we become more conscious, as we're rising in our density and in our conscious awareness, and we're broadening our spectrum of understanding, right? Then it becomes more detailed, right? The spectrum is wider, and so each characteristic that embodies the spectrum, right, becomes more defined in there. You get more intricate discrepancies, things that kind of separate out, the gray areas, the pigmentations and the shading, the gradient, every little piece between good and evil becomes more clear and more fluid, and you can understand the growth pattern between good and evil, between the opposing forces, right? And if you think of it in terms like basic physics, kinetic energy, polarity, magnets, and in that kind of energetic world, when we have opposing forces, it's interesting because what happens with them is that they do this seeking of balancing, because they are pulling each other, but they're also repel. And it creates this beautiful seeking of harmony, of balancing, right? And that goes back to our eternal truth and the unique purpose of this plane and existence of balance and growth, right? Of seeking a middle ground. And duality is what allows us to empathetically and intelligently make these conscious observations, right? And not to place emotional good and bad on it. Because this is the thing here. When we talk about duality and we add good and evil into that spectrum, right? It's so easy for us to forget good and bad are part of a spectrum of comparison of a whole, and sit things like they're forever good, they're forever bad. It's a black and white, and there's a line right between good and bad, and it's like you get there and you're bad, you're evil if you've crossed this side. But it does not work like that. our setup here and the inorganic has very conveniently harnessed that belief structure and built a very strong one, to really make us believe that it's solid and to make us believe that good and evil are outside of a spectrum, that they are um, definite points, and that things hold only one or the other. But that is an inversion, right? That goes against truth, because we know as truth, it's a spectrum, it's comparison. Everything contains portions of both. And how good they are at balancing those is where, in the gray ground on the meter of the spectrum, that you will reside. Lastly, because I'm pushing past 15 minutes here, and I could talk about duality all day, and I've wrote many blogs about it. I'll leave some descriptions. I'll leave some links in the descriptions, excuse me, on writings or other podcasts that have talked more about this, in case this new concept of duality, of looking at duality in this way, is new to you, right? Because that was a huge step for me, and it really opened up my perspective and put a new filter on life for me when I started to realize, wait a minute, duality is not an end-all be-all, especially the good, evil, positive, negative version of duality too, because it's very mainstream. When we hear duality, we think of the yin yang sign, and we think of dark and light, evil versus good. And it's so embedded in us to think that the embodiment of good or the embodiment of evil can taint or color the whole in a different light than it is. When in fact, those good and bad, or evil and light, dark and light, are fluid and eternal and everlasting inside, and they're always moving and changing and balancing. And so it's so important to remember that it's all encompassing of all of these things. That is what the purpose of the tool of duality should always have been. Is supposed to be a wonderful tool that we can use to guide comparisons, to make better observations, to have a wider spectrum during decision making, to make better choices, right? To make more wise assumptions about what we're seeing. And also, I really feel like duality is supposed to be a constant reminder to us that even these assumptions and the gradients that we're making, the observations that we're seeing during the working, should never be cast into and onto the conclusion of the whole. That's unfair. That is untrue. And that's the distortion. But the inorganic love that, and the distortion works really well for them. And it harnesses a lot of negative energy, and it produces and promotes so much more to be put into it and entangled within it. So of course, the structuring of that mentality is very strong. But if you can step outside of it and say to yourself, hey, wait a minute here, what am I comparing? At the end of the day, right? If duality is a spectrum, if opposites are opposing forces, what is the center? What is the whole? Who's the observer? Who's making the comparison? And for what purpose? Because a comparison in itself is just a form of measurement, right? of what? For who? For what benefit? There again, we are reminded and brought outside and to see the circle as the whole. Not to know it for sure, and not to, again, step back out and think that we're supposed to have the answers and then some great total piece comes together and we know, oh, this is God and God's purpose is X, Y, and Z. Or it's the ether, it's the universe, or it's nothing, or whatever. That is not the purpose in the exercise. The purpose in the exercise is to broaden your spectrum of view as much as you can and to release the limitations into thinking that because something is experienced as negative or painful or harmful, or something is showing itself as a shadow, or something is distorting itself, that it's pinned there, that it is negative. That is just what it is. It's there for eternity to be negative, and that's its role. If that is the case, if that is the point, then stagnation, settling, would be the end goal. And if settling and stagnation, if entropy, right, if chaos rules, if disorder is seeking us always, because that makes that the purpose. Do you see here this difference? And it's something that I'm working on explaining with more clarity, because it's clear in my mind, but it doesn't always come out as clear as I'm hoping, right? But and that's the beauty of this life, and that's the beauty of my experience here and everyone else's unique perspectives, right? It's a work in progress. It's not anything. It's not the circle at the end of the game, right? And I'm not trying to promote it as such, and there are plenty out there who are promoting things like as such. And I've said in numerous episodes and so much across my website and my podcast and things, if people are promoting, or you are promoting, a finish line, an end, a higher knowledge that is fully evolved, fully ascended, your higher self, you're in a liar's loop here. And I hate to break it to you. And chances are you won't even get it. You'll just be annoyed and triggered by this catalyst in your loop here, and you'll disregard it and keep moving around in your own preconceived, confirmed loop of information, because that's what programming does to us, right? And it's not until you're ready to assess and mark that catalyst, until you're ready to hear the words for yourself, to say, wait a minute, if I have reached some kind of plateau, or if there is a plateau for me to reach, then there is a clear and present end to this game. And if there's a clear and present end to this game here on Earth, what's outside? Who's running the game? What does that even mean? Now, it's a catch-22, and you're back in the same circle, just a larger circle outside the original circle, right? And so you're chasing your tail again. And that's why I just say, as soon as you can cast that aside, accept the great mystery for what it is, and not worry about that, you can better assess, and you have more clarity and chance to see all the gray areas within the game that you're in. And so again, and with that, I will just add the duality and the mirroring, right? Because all things reflecting, as above, so below, right? All things mirror each other. Duality and thinking that the world here, Earth, is some kind of game or a life or a one-time around thing. And then, well, who's put it together? What's the point? Obviously there's an outside if there's an inside, right? Well, if you see God and the devil as a spectrum of duality, and you believe that source, infinite creator, our logos, whatever, the sun, God, Allah, whatever that it is that you choose to see as our the infinite creator, if you place them within the spectrum of duality, then you're agreeing immediately that there's something outside of that. There's a creator of those two, right? And yes, there is, and yes, there are, and yes, yeah, God is not on that spectrum. Man-made religious God, light, all of those distortions, those identifying words, the concepts of those, the images, those things in the imagination space of human, most certainly are contained in that circle of duality, of good and evil, of light and dark. And the devil or evil is in that spectrum as well. It is. But I stand strong in my knowing of the ultimate circle and of ultimate creation, and that outside of that is a broader, bigger perspective, purpose, mystery, just collectively waiting for us to make it there, right? To enjoy the purpose of life, really, is what it comes down to. And this is why I think a lot of people, I'm pushing a half an hour on this one. I need to close out. But this is why I think a lot of people really tie in and so tightly into the God and devil aspect of dark and light in this duality, and they really can embody it and really take it and personalize it into thinking that it is everything, and that it's an end-all be-all, right? Like there's a line in between, and you get on this side and you're going to hell, and you get on this side and you're in heaven forever. It's freeing and loving and of true source energy, of a real lightness, to believe and accept that source creator, infinite intelligence, has created the spectrum of duality and contained it within a circle for us here to learn and experience, to witness and watch and grow through, and use the comparisons and the contrasts of duality to seek harmonious balancing within both opposites, right? Now, I hope this has been enlightening. I hope it's made sense. If not, if you have questions, if you're super confused, I would love replies or responses. Maybe I could try to clarify a bit more. I also want to just quickly say that in the next episode, I'm going to go over non-duality and the creator mindset. And so if you're having questions more about like, what's after duality, or realizing, no, duality is just a measurement of comparison, it's just a thing to use. It doesn't actually define anything for real that I'm looking at, it's not a label on things. It's just the label that I'm putting on it is only such for now at this very moment because it looks to be this way in comparison to other things at this time, right? And so it can change in comparison to other things. And that label, that marker that we're putting on things is not forever. It's just the present moment. And if you can understand that, and you can step out and start to take those permanent labels off of good, bad, dark, light, hot, cold, up and down, left and right, all these things that you think are stagnant and placed, pinned down, and realize that they're not, that they that they might be seeming and appearing to be for now, but that doesn't mean that they can't easily be picked up and put in somewhere new. You know, that's again the mind control program here that's so strong in duality and conforming to this is that you you have to believe in that. You have to get wrapped up in that in order to create and manifest things in 3D that work in the framework that they've created here in the Matrix, right? And if you didn't watch episode 6, go back and watch a little bit of what I've talked about the Matrix, the grid, right? The rat race, all these things that we call the system, the man. These harnessed and built three-dimensional structures that really are beacons of negative energy, that are really built much like energy station, an electrical power place where everybody goes in there, and since we've agreed to perform within the rules of 3D in the Matrix, we instantly start feeding with our power, feeding that powerhouse, whatever. But it relies on rules that you follow, things like duality, you know, and really harnessing your creative energy to pin these things down and be for real and be what they are in duality inside the structure. But when you start to loosen it up and wait a minute, these are comparisons, things are free to change, this is a free will universe, well, that's not compatible to the 3D matrix, right? And so either you're going to be met with lots of thoughts that force you to relinquish your silly ideas about, duality, about a free will universe, and harness yourself back and put yourself back in this box in here where it's good versus evil all the time, and you have to choose a side. It's dark versus light every time, and you need to choose whether you're a day person or a night person. It's hot weather or cold weather, and you need to decide whether, you're a hot or cold person. And it's like, wait a minute. I like fall. I love spring. I enjoy winter and looking forward to summer coming. I enjoy sledding in the snow and freezing my butt off outside with hot cocoa because I'm thinking and reminding myself, oh, I'm going to be sweating and so hot in summer, and I'm going to remember and appreciate and love and hold in my space for longing for later the comparison of snow and cold, right? So yeah, I hope this has opened up your eyes just a little bit. This video's gone way too much longer than I hoped. And so if you've watched the whole thing, thank you so much for joining me on episode 6 on duality for comprehending consciousness. I hope you'll check me out next time. I am going to do a video number 7 on non-duality, like I said, so we'll go over that concept and what that means. And if in the meantime you're looking for more, you can always find me directly on amariespeaks.com, or I'm on Telegram, t.me amariespeaks, and I share daily positivity tips, infographic memes and things, some of my blogs over there. And I also have a podcast on Spotify. If you're interested in listening to me more, you can find me over there, Amarie Speaks as well. So thanks so much for watching this extra long episode, and I will catch you next time.